Welcome to the next sentence diagramming video, and this one is devoted to something called the noun clause. You know that a clause by now is a group of words that has a subject and a verb, a subject and a predicate, okay? Doesn't mean it can stand alone, doesn't mean it's independent. So you looked at dependent clauses that acted like adverbs, right? The ones that started with the alubis words. You looked at dependent clauses that started with relative pronouns or relative adverbs and therefore acted like adjectives, right? Noun clauses are different. They don't stand alone by themselves, but they don't necessarily modify anything in the independent clause. So they don't modify anything. They don't act like adjectives or adverbs. Instead, they act like a noun in the independent clause. So if you think about a noun, right, and how it functions in the context of an independent clause, it is always either a subject or an object, which means that these noun clauses, they're like little clauses hidden inside an independent clause. They can perform any job that a noun can do. So they can be subjects, they can be direct objects, they can be indirect objects. Objects of prepositions, predicate nouns. Any job that a noun can do, a noun clause can also do. Okay? So let's just take a look at a basic sentence to get a sense of how this works. Broccoli is fine with me. Look at that sentence number one. You can probably tell, without even diagramming it, if I asked you, what is the subject in that sentence? You would say, you know what? It's broccoli. Broccoli is the subject in that sentence, right? It's what the sentence is about. And then we ask ourselves to find the predicate, well, what about broccoli? In this case, is fine with me. Is fine with me is the predicate, okay? That's pretty basic. Now, let's take a look at the sentence two. I've replaced broccoli with whatever you want. Whatever you want is fine with me. The predicate stays identical, okay? But now the subject is actually a mini clause. It's a noun clause. How do I know? Well, number one, I know it's a clause because it has a subject and a verb. Subject is you, and the verb that it's linked to is want. Whatever you want is fine with me, okay? Now it starts with a word that is one of the words that could start a noun clause, and they're actually down at the bottom of the screen. To be honest, there's a lot of them, that, if, whether, who, etc. You can read the whole list yourself. I think rather than memorize all of those words that start noun clauses, simply looking at the big picture of an independent clause and finding a little clause inside is probably the best way to go. It'll start with one of these words, and you've got to recognize, just like you could recognize broccoli is fine with me, that broccoli is a subject, you should be able to look at whatever you want is fine with me and see that whatever you want is functioning like a noun. It's functioning like the subject in that sentence, okay? So let's take a look at how to diagram these things, okay? It's a little bit different than anything we've done so far. So I'm going to scroll down, and we will take a look at that sentence. Whatever you want is fine with me. So, if we diagram broccoli is fine with me, we know that we would do this. Broccoli is, what is it? Here's my predicate adjective. It's fine. And with me is a prepositional phrase, and it goes under the verb because it's acting like an adverb, right? So that's pretty basic. Now, we do that same process down here, except now we replace broccoli with a clause. So that clause, because it has its own subject and verb, just like a dependent clause, it has to have its own horizontal line. But it has to also fit in the position of the subject on the independent clause line. So here's our independent clause vertical, horizontal line, right? And what we do is we draw what's called a pedestal, okay? Or fork, some people refer to it as. I like pedestal. And we draw our horizontal line on that pedestal, right? And now that noun clause is going to sit in the position, in the sentence slot or position that the subject would be in, where broccoli would be. And we diagram it just like you diagram any other clause. You is a subject. It's linked to the verb want, right? What about you? You want whatever. That means whatever is the thing you want. It's the thing being acted upon. It's the direct object. Okay? Notice that whatever is one of those words that was listed above. Here it is. And it's starting the noun clause. All right? So that's how you diagram noun clauses. The trick is they won't always be in the subject. They might be in the object spot. And it could be a direct object, object of preposition. It could be in the complement spot, right? Because nouns can go there as well. So you have to recognize how that clause is functioning in the context of the independent clause. Let's take a look at some examples. Example 1. Where the sock had gone was a mystery. Right? Who hasn't lost a sock in the dryer? And wherever it goes, I don't know. I lose them all the time. So, where is one of the words that starts a noun clause? Right? It's one of the ones listed up there. So, where the sock had gone, I know, is a clause. Why? Well, it has a verb, had gone, and it has a subject linked to that verb. So I know it's a clause by definition. It has the two ingredients. And then was a mystery is actually the predicate of the independent clause. So we could replace, another way of thinking of it, we could replace this noun clause with a noun or a pronoun, right? I'll use the pronoun because it's vague, we don't know. Something, right? Something was a mystery. That something would be a subject, wouldn't it? So just like in our example, it's got to be diagrammed in the sentence position of the subject. So I'm going to draw a horizontal line, okay? I'm going to start with the predicate because that's the easy part. Firewall was, that's our state of being verb or linking verb. So I know here comes a complement. In this case, the complement is a noun, so it's a predicate nominative, right? So something was a mystery. What was this something? I diagram it on a pedestal. Here's my line, okay? Now, I do the subject first within that. Doesn't matter what starts the clause, it's the subject first. And the subject is sock. And what has the sock done, right? Here's the verb, had, helping verb, gone, main verb, right? The describes the sock, answering the question, which sock? The sock. And where, if you recall, is an adverb. So it goes under the verb had gone. Where the sock had gone was a mystery. Okay? This whole noun clause here, sitting on a pedestal, is acting like the subject in that sentence. Let's move on to number 2. I wonder how I lost it. Well, if I take a look at that sentence, I notice the how in there, and how is one of those words that could potentially start a noun clause. And I know that happens to be a clause because now I'm going to stare at it and look at it a little closer. And I know it has a subject, I, and what did I do? I lost. So I know it has a subject and a verb. It meets the requirements of a clause. Okay? So when I look at the big picture, I don't think how I lost is acting like the subject here. I say that because I'm looking at the rest of the sentence. And the rest of the sentence has a pronoun followed by a verb. Well, we know from diagramming that's the subject. What did I do? I don't know why I made that so long, sorry. I wonder. Now you wonder something, don't you? We can replace this with that indefinite pronoun, something. It's a noun. You're wondering about something. So I wonder this. This is being wondered by I, in other words. So think about how that's acting. It's the thing being acted upon by the subject. Uh-oh, it must be, you guessed it, a direct object. So we put it on a pedestal in the direct object spot. Now, where's the subject and how I lost it? I. Firewall. Where's the verb? Who or what is losing? I am. I lost. What did I lose? Something's being acted upon. It. And how, just like in the last example, is an adverb. So it goes under the verb lost. Now this example is a noun clause acting as a direct object. Okay? Pretty simple. Let's take a look at the last one and then we'll be done. Wherever we are going will be wonderful. Okay? Now, wherever happens to be one of those words, starts a noun clause. And I think to myself, well, how do I know that's a clause? Can I find a subject linked to a verb? Well, here's my verb, are going, right? So I know that's a helping verb, main verb. And I ask myself, who or what is doing the going? Oh, it's we. I have a subject, okay? So here's my noun clause. And will be wonderful is the rest of the sentence. So this thing, right, remember, can be replaced by, and I like to do this because I think it just helps me make sense of it, that word something, okay? Something will be wonderful, right? So that something is the noun clause wherever we're going. And you can probably tell that now it's in the position of a subject, just like the first example. So let's do the predicate first because that's the easiest part, right? Will be wonderful. Well, will and be are state of being verbs. And last time I checked, wonderful is an adjective. So that's a predicate adjective. It will be wonderful. Now, it, this something, is the subject. It's the whole clause. So we create a pedestal, put it on there, okay? What is the subject? We. What are we doing? We are, helping verb, main verb, going. And where are we going? We are going wherever, right? And where is an adverbial question. So I'm running out of space here. But I'm going to write it really small, wherever. I know you probably can't see that because it's so tiny. But that's wherever. And it's coming off of are going because wherever is an adverb, okay? So we talked about how noun clauses function like nouns in the independent clause. And they'll sit on what I call a pedestal. Some people call it a fork or whatever. And then I like it like it's a little pedestal, like a little trophy sitting up there in the position of the noun, where a singular noun would be in the independent clause. In this last example, it's as the subject, okay? So again, familiarize yourself with some of those words that noun clauses start with, and that might be able to help you. But I think big picture-wise, rather than just memorizing a bunch of words, if you look at the sentence as a whole and can recognize that that noun clause can be replaced by a singular noun, you'll be able to better identify those noun clauses and see where they're positioned in the independent clause. Thanks for watching.